A man stands in the forum of a Roman city, holding a small clay token in his palm. He didn't earn it. He didn't buy it. Someone with more power than him simply handed it to him. And the moment he closed his fingers around it, his entire life changed. Because in the world Paul wrote his letters into, that gift was never free. It came with a name, an obligation, a bond that would follow him for the rest of his life. The word for that gift was charis. We translate it grace. And somewhere between the first century and today, we quietly stripped it of everything, except the one syllable we liked best: free. You have heard the phrase 1,000 times. Grace is unmerited favor. Grace is free. There's nothing you can do to earn it, and nothing you need to do to keep it. That's not wrong exactly, but it's not the whole word either. And once you see what got left out, you'll never hear amazing grace the same way again. To understand why, you have to understand what the word actually was, before it ever became a religious term. In the Greco-Roman world Paul lived and wrote in, charis wasn't a religious word first. It was a social one. It described the entire system of patronage that held that civilization together. A patron, someone with wealth, land, or influence, would extend a gift or a favor to someone beneath him. That gift was called charis, and the person who received it didn't just say thank you and walk away. They became bound to the patron in an ongoing relationship of loyalty, honor, and public gratitude. This wasn't a footnote in Roman life. It was the architecture of it. Cities had patrons. Guilds had patrons. Freed slaves had patrons. Whole networks of favor stretched from the emperor down to the smallest household, and everyone in that chain understood the rules without needing them explained. The entire economy of favor, obligation, and status ran on this word. But here's what most people never notice. Charis only flowed in one direction, from someone with more power or resources to someone with less. A patron could never receive charis from his client, only give it. And once given, it created something scholars call an asymmetrical bond. The receiver could never fully repay it. That was the point. The gift was too large to settle. What it created instead was loyalty that lasted a lifetime, sometimes generations, passed down from a client to his own children. So when Paul reaches for this word to describe what God has done, he isn't reaching for a neutral term. He is reaching for the most loaded social word available to him. A word that every reader in Rome, Corinth, and Ephesus would have instantly recognized as carrying weight, not lightness. Picture the church at Corinth receiving Paul's letters. This was a city obsessed with status, patronage, and public honor. Wealthy patrons sponsored feasts, and excontiented the best seats and the best portions in return. Inscriptions have survived from cities like this one, carved in stone, publicly thanking a patron for exactly this kind of gift. A permanent record of the debt of honor owed. The whole city ran on who owed what, to whom. Into that world, Paul writes that God has given them charis, and every single person in that congregation would have immediately understood. This is not a small favor. This is the kind of gift that reorders a life. Now here's the surprising part. Charis shares its root with chairo, to rejoice, and with charisma, gift. But the root itself, cha, carries the idea of something bestowed that produces favor and delight in return. It is not neutral. It is relational by definition. A gift given by a patron was never meant to be received and forgotten. It was meant to be received and responded to. This is why, throughout Paul's letters, charis is almost never mentioned without an expectation attached. Not an expectation of payment, but of transformed loyalty. Grace was never a transaction you could walk away from unchanged. It was a bond. So why did free become the whole definition? Because it's the part of the word Western Christianity especially post-Reformation Protestantism, needed to hear loudest. In a religious world weighed down by earned merit, indulgences, and performance, grace is free was a lifeline. And it's true. You cannot buy it. You cannot earn it. That emphasis was necessary. And it was right. Entire generations found real peace standing on it. But in gaining that emphasis, the relational half of the word quietly slipped out the back door. We kept the gift. We lost the bond it created. And a word that once described the deepest kind of belonging shrank down into a word that mostly just meant permission. There's another detail hiding beneath the surface though, and it shows up the moment you watch what Paul actually does with the word once he's used it. In Romans 6, right after his most soaring language about grace, he asks the obvious first-century question, shall we go on sinning that grace may increase? His answer is not, grace doesn't care. His answer is, by no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it? In Titus 2, Paul writes that the grace of God has appeared, training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions. Grace, pictured as a teacher, actively shaping a life, not a document filed away and forgotten. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says he worked harder than all the other apostles, then immediately corrects himself. Not I, but the grace of God that was with me. Notice what he does there. He doesn't say grace excused him from labor. He says grace was the engine behind it. Even Paul's own greeting formula carries the pattern. Nearly every one of his letters opens with grace and peace to you, and closes with a variation of, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Grace isn't just the doctrine he's teaching. It's the atmosphere he wants his readers living inside. From the first line to the last. Something you stay inside of. Not something you receive once and sit on a shelf. Every time charis shows up in Paul's letters, something follows it. Never a bill. Always a bond. Quick word before we keep going. If studies like this are helping you read your Bible with fresh eyes, the best way to support this channel is to subscribe and leave a comment. It genuinely helps these videos reach people searching for exactly this. And if you're already part of this community, thank you. It means more than you know. Now, back to that clay token in the Roman Forum. Because this is where the word starts to heal something, instead of just correcting it. Ipou grace really is unearned favor plus an unbreakable bond. Two things become true at once, and neither one cancels the other. First, there is nothing you did, and nothing you can do, to make God's favor toward you conditional on your performance. The gift was never for sale, and it isn't now. Second, the gift was never meant to sit in your hand like an object you display and forget. It was meant to bind you to the one who gave it. The way a patron's gift bound a client's whole life, to gratitude and loyalty. Not for a season, permanently. This is why the New Testament can say, in the very same breath, that you are saved by grace through faith, not works, and that faith without works is dead. Those aren't in tension. They're describing the same gift from two different angles. Free to receive, never free to walk away from unchanged. But the story doesn't end there. Because the grace equals a free pass with no strings and no relationship reading, has a real history. It picked up serious momentum in the 20th century in reaction to legalism, teaching that reduced Christianity to a checklist of behaviors. You had to perform to stay right with God. In pushing back hard against that error, some popular preaching swung to the opposite pole. Grace as a kind of moral blank check. A gift with no bond attached at all. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, writing decades earlier while watching this exact drift happen in the churches around him, had already named the danger. He called it cheap grace. Grace without discipleship. Forgiveness without the cost of following. Communion without confession. He wasn't attacking grace. He was defending it from being hollowed out into something it was never meant to be. But we have to be just as careful walking the other direction. Recovering the bond in charis does not mean grace becomes something you earn, maintain, or lose through good behavior. That ditch is just as deep as the other one, maybe deeper, because it can quietly turn the gospel back into a performance review with better branding. The patron-client bond in the ancient world was never initiated by the client's merit. It was always initiated by the patron's choice. God is not a patron waiting to see if you're grateful enough to keep the gift. The bond is real, para, but the initiative, the gift, and the security of it all still rest entirely on Him. Grace obligates you to nothing you must produce. It draws you toward everything you were made for. Picture a young man in a Roman provincial town who has nothing. No land, no trade, no standing of his own. A wealthy patron, a man he has never done a single thing to deserve the attention of, walks up one afternoon and hands him the deed to a small vineyard on the hillside outside town. No payment requested. No condition attached to the gift itself. The young man didn't earn the vineyard, and he never could have. He stands there in the dust, turning the deed over in his hands, unable to fully believe what just happened to his life. But watch what happens in the weeks that follow. He doesn't take the deed and disappear into anonymity, farming his land in isolation, as if the patron never existed. He shows up at the patron's door. He greets him in the street with honor, in front of people who matter to both their reputations. When the patron's name is spoken poorly by others at the market, the young man defends it without being asked to. Word gets back to the patron of how his new client speaks of him. And it changes nothing about the gift already given, but it changes everything about the life growing up around it. Not because he's afraid of losing the vineyard. Gratitude that real doesn't know how to stay silent. And loyalty that real doesn't wait for a contract to enforce it. Years later, when the young man has sons of his own working that same hillside, he tells them the story of the day a man who owed him nothing gave him everything. And they grow up understanding, without ever being taught it as a rule, that the family belongs to that patron's household now. By gift, not by wage. That's the vineyard grace hands you. Free to receive, impossible to receive rightly, and remain unmoved. So where does this land for you? Maybe you've spent years afraid that grace has an expiration date, that one more failure will finally be the one that uses it up, the one God can't overlook. Hear this clearly. The gift was never conditional on your performance, and it still isn't. You didn't qualify for it, and you can't disqualify yourself from it either. That fear can put down its weapon. Or maybe you've drifted the other direction. Grace as a word you say to explain why nothing about your life needs to change. A phrase you reach for instead of a bond you actually live inside of. If that's you, sit with the vineyard for a second. What would it look like to actually show up at the door? Not out of fear of losing what you were given, but because you finally understood what it cost someone to give it to you in the first place. And maybe you're just tired of running a ledger in your head every night, tracking whether you've done enough today to deserve what you already have, adding and subtracting a debt that was actually settled a long time ago. Grace was never asking you to keep that ledger. It was asking you to put it down and walk through the door already standing open in front of you. The word was never small. It held a gift too large to earn and a bond too real to ignore, both at once, with no contradiction between them. If this helped you hear Amazing Grace a little differently today, subscribe, leave a comment below, and share it with someone who needs to hear that the gift was never cheap and was never for sale either. May you receive it freely today, and may it move you the way it was always meant to. God bless you.